You're listening to the Meet the Farmers podcast with me, your host, Ben Eagle. Please remember to subscribe to the show wherever you are listening. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this bonus episode of the podcast, which has been produced in partnership with A-Plan Rural Insurance, which provides insurance cover for various types of farms and estates, big and small. Check them out if you haven't already come across them. And if you're on Instagram, they've been doing quite a few really cool takeovers with various farming and rural-based Instagrammers. You can find them at A-Plan Rural. So anyway, for this episode, I'm joined by James Dawson, who is an account executive from the Scotland team of A-Plan Rural. And together, we're taking a look at the Logie estate in Moray, which is insured by A-Plan Rural and is a really great example of a diversified, multi-generational rural family business. So farming and forestry are at the backbone of the estate. They have a herd of longhorn cattle, which is part of the home business. And they also established Logie Timber in 2017 for moving that particular aspect of the estate forwards. Of particular interest is Logie Steading, which is a growing collection of like-minded independent shopkeepers, crafters, producers, all operating from retail units on the estate. And those buildings were actually once farm buildings. One of the things James and I were particularly interested to hear about is the estate's plan for Christmas and how they make the most of the Christmas market opportunity. I'm sure that some of you listeners may also have your own business plans for Christmas, so it's interesting hearing about Logie's plans for sure. Representing Logie is Alec Leng, who is one of the estate's owners, and we started by asking him to tell us a bit about his part of the world, Moray.
We are in the part of Moray about 10 miles from the sea. Moray is on the bit of coast between Inverness and Aberdeen. We're in a prime pine growing area. I think Moray's the most wooded county in Scotland.
How is it?
A huge amount of pine and Douglas fir in this area. All the farming around us is grazing ground. There's a lot of vegetables growing down on the coast in the sandy soils.
Give us some background to the history of the estate and how long your family's been up there.
We are approaching 100 years of my family at Logie. My great-great-grandfather made his money making biscuits in Edinburgh, and he bought the estate in the 1920s, and it has been run by my family since then. So I'm the fifth generation. We've got children here who occasionally help us out. They're quite young at the moment. They come around and help out with all the jobs, and we very much hope that it'll carry on to their generation and on from there. It started life very much as a traditional Highland estate where the family lived in Edinburgh and made their money down there, and they came up here on holiday. It was farming and forestry, and that's what happened here. Yeah. Over the last couple of generations, it's changed to be a standalone business in its own right, with quite a lot of diversification. We're still active in those traditional parts of the estate, but there's a lot more going on around and about, which we'll probably talk about a bit later on.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, you've got some good stories there, haven't you, which I think James is going to go into.
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly got a rich heritage, a long history, and I'm sure there's some fascinating characters. But one thing I sort of, researching this episode that's really stuck out to me was that the Wolf of Badenoch. I was wondering if you'd tell me more about this character.
Well, I can't tell you a huge amount about him. I'm not. We should have had my wife along. She's a history expert. Although he lived nearby, I can't claim that he was an ancestor. I think he's been described as one of Scotland's vilest men. I think he was a third son of one of the Scottish kings. He lived on an island in Loch and Daub. As well as being surrounded by water, it's got 2 fortified walls around it.
Wow.
He protected himself well.
Sounds like he needed to.
Yes, I think he needed to.
So what about the running of the estate itself? Who's involved and how does it all work in practice? Because you've got a huge amount going on.
Yeah, we've got a lot going on. My parents are still working here. They are in their 60s and 70s. My wife and I moved back home 9 years ago to work here, and it's still very much a 2-generational business in that sense. We're running the estate together. We each have our different areas that we look after, but we talk to each other regularly and help each other out and ping ideas off each other. And like I said before, the children are exposed to that as well, and they show their interest in different areas. We also have an assistant estate manager who's just started with us, and office staff and ground staff and forestry and farming staff as well.
And take us through just some of the enterprises, because I mean, obviously farming and forestry is still core to the business, but you've got a lot of other things happening as well.
Yeah, farming and forestry is. We've got a herd of longhorn cattle that run through the farm shop at Logie Steading. Most of the rest of the farm ground is let out. The forestry is all in hand. Logie Steading's one of the biggest activities on the place. It's a farm buildings that were built by my great-great-grandfather in the 20s. Like most farm buildings that were built back then, they're now not suitable size for modern day farming. They were converted in the 90s into business units, and the businesses have changed over the years, but it's always been centered around a local makers collaborative approach to business, so that each unit is let out to an independent tenant, all working in that making craft industry, and they market together and they operate as a unit together, attracting people to come in and spend time here, to spend the day here, go for walks down the river. And there's a whiskey shop and a bookshop and a cafe and an art gallery and a farm shop and a craft shop. There's a lot going on, as well. But outside of that, we've got a small broadband business. We've got the sawmill, commercial property, residential property. There's a lot going on.
Yeah. And the businesses that are at the Steading, how did you sort of originally attract those in? Did they come to you, or did you go to them?
The Steading started with, the main focus was a gun maker back in the 1990s, and that had a lot of hand skilled trades, and that had a engraver. One of the units had an engraver in it, and the actual gun makers was in another unit, and there was a cafe and an art gallery in another bit. And from that point onwards, there was some HIE funding towards that project, and from that moment onwards, it's always had this local craft angle. It's always attracted those people, and that's been the USP of what we do there. People come in to see that local skill.
Yeah. I mean, James, you've been up there today.
I have.
What's your very impression of the place? I know it's very wet at the moment.
Well, I've got to be careful what I say here, but no, it was excellent. I've come up with my young family today and my wife, and we went to the cafe, we went to the bookshop, and there was something for and there's a play park. There's something for all of us. We had a really nice time, and Scottish listeners will understand this. English might not. But if you really have to try the Cullen Skink if you come to the cafe.
Oh.
Are you familiar with Cullen Skink, Ben?
Nice, I am. Yes.
Yeah, it's excellent.
And of course, Christmas is just around the corner.
Christmas is around the corner. Yes, we've got. In the past, we've done a big Christmas market once a year in December, and it's posed a few issues to us over the past. So this year, we haven't had a Christmas market for 3 years because of COVID, and this year we're doing 3 mini markets across the next 3 weekends. So you've been witnessing the setting up of the Christmas market. Lots of people busily running around putting up lights and Christmas trees, and it's really nice to see that Christmassy feel come into the place, especially when the dark mornings and the dark evenings. It can get a bit grey at this time of the year, but it's nice to have that happening now.
You're really starting to feel it in the air up here. I noticed coming up from Fife that it's getting cold. This winter's in the air, so it was really welcome to see the sort of Christmas lights. Yeah. And it's looking nice.
I mean, in terms of Christmas, how important is Christmas for you as a business?
It's vital because of the time of year. We have a fairly busy Easter time, and then you get a bit of a lull, and then you get a nice busy tourism season through July and August, and that carries on a lot through September. And then you get into these colder, shorter days, and less people come out, and then you get this surge at Christmas with everyone cheery and feeling like they're wanting to come out and have a nice time and spend some money. And it just brings the place to life. It's critical. Yeah, it's a really important part of the year.
So your tagline is a place to take your time, which I thought was quite interesting. What do you mean by that?
We've always been conscious that when you go somewhere as a tourist, and when I use the word tourist, we're talking about local tourists, people from 5 miles down the road who are coming out for a cup of tea. They're in this bracket as well. People who are coming to visit. Quite often you go to a place, there's something for one person to do. You choose to go to the garden centre because one of you likes to garden, or you choose to go somewhere because it's one person's thing. But when you come to Logie, we aim for there to be something for everyone, so the family can take your time. You can go for a wander down the river while someone who's keen to go to the shops wants to go around the shop to go and play in the playground with your kids. So you can take your time. You can spend your day here. You can go to the cafe for your cum and skink for lunch, and that's the whole idea: is to come out here, absorb what's going on and the lovely area we're in, and take your time, relax, have a nice time.
Yeah, and similarly with that, you've got quite a lot of different events happening up with you through the year. Just take us through some of those, and again, the importance of events for the wider business. And I suppose what I'm thinking here as well, farmer listeners amongst us might be looking of other ways to diversify, and events might be one way that they're thinking of. But what are the pitfalls? What are the good sides from your point of view?
The key is bringing in a slightly different group of people to Logie and putting us on the map for them. We've got our sort of base visitors who might visit us once a week, whatever, but when you get to events, you're advertising in a different way. You're attracting different people because they might be interested to come on a garden tour, or they might be interested in the outdoor theatre. We have 3 or 4 outdoor theatre productions every year. We've done a timber festival in the past, which we're looking to do again. The Christmas market we've talked about. All these slightly different events attract different people, and that's what we're always trying to do: is bring slightly different people through here to really get more people through the door.
And what about sustainability? Because I mean, it's clearly a key thing for you through different elements of the business. But what does it actually mean in practice, and how have you taken that sort of broad idea of sustainability and really driven it down to something practical?
We spend probably too much time talking about sustainability, and normally it comes with the question, well, what are you talking about? Because are you talking social, are you talking environmental, are you talking financial? We like to think of it as all 3 of those things, because you've got to consider all of them. I think when you talk about it without that context, people immediately think, in this day and age anyway, about energy and about your inputs and your outputs. But a place like Logie, with all the other things going on, we try and consider all 3 of those things. And being a family business, the key is for it to be sustainable, to pass on to the children, so they can pass it on to their children. And it has to satisfy those 3 things to be able to do that. And does that answer your question? It's a bit sort of wishy-washy.
Yeah. I think it does. If I can expand on the sort of environmental and sustainability aspect, one thing that you've said you're keen to do is to establish a carbon baseline. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, I will. There's so much chat about carbon. It's every second webinar that you get through on your email is about carbon. Because it's such a new young market, there's a lot of information and possibly misinformation and lots of different ways of doing stuff. We're not that far through it at all. We've started at a very basic level in measuring what we can easily measure: our diesel, our electricity, what trees are growing on the place. The farming side of it's a little trickier for Logie because most of the farm is tenanted out. Yeah. So that involves, getting other people involved in what you're trying to do. We do have a carbon report on the bit of farm that we run ourselves around Logie Steading, and it's definitely work in progress. I'm keen to understand more about the carbon cycle on Logie, but every person you talk to has got a slightly different angle and a slightly different way of thinking about it, and what happens in the soil, what happens in the trees. There's a wind farm on Logie. How does that carbon get accounted for? Solar panels, and there's so much going on, and it's a difficult arena to understand. We're quite keen to work at it at a low level like that, and try and understand it ourselves, rather than saying to someone, right, here you go, here's the estate, can you tell us where we are with our carbon? I've got an engineering background. I'm keen to get into the detail and understand it, rather than just be told with a nice shiny report and some graphs that we've got X tons of carbon going here or there. So it's a slow approach. It might be sped up by government starting to use it as a subsidy tool or a tax tool. Then we might have to change what we do, but that's our approach at the moment.
Yeah, and it's for the long term. You mentioned your background there. I'm just saying, obviously, you've been on the estate for a number of years now, but what are some of the main things that you took from your background coming to the estate, but also what have you learned since coming back?
Well, I grew up here, and if you're an engineer, you're born an engineer. It's how your brain works.
Exactly.
It's not really how you're trained as much as how your brain works. So I've always taken machines apart and gone to someone and said, "Help! Can you help me put it back together?" And so I've always been a practical person. And even now, I'd rather nip off and fix something than do that tricky email. My wife and I worked down in Cornwall at her family business running holiday cottages down there. So we learned a huge amount on the small business side there. So that was a huge help. That was after doing engineering. So the engineering it's more a mindset. And I think it's that logical approach, analysing a problem and solving it rather than sort of getting tied up too much in things. I think that's probably the most important thing I've taken from it.
Yeah, and I mean, just going back to people again, I mean, you mentioned your family a lot, which is clearly an important element of the estate as well, and also with the steading and just really a place that brings people together. Why is it's perhaps an obvious question, but why is bringing people together so important for you as a business?
The people are important to a place like Logie because they are the place. The place and the people are one thing. There are 30 residential houses on Logie, and most of the people that live in those houses work in the area, not particularly on the estate, but those people work in the steading, they work in the sawmill. It's the sort of oil that makes the place work. Without that, you've not really got anything. On a wider sense, bringing people together through the steading, that's a bit more of a sort of commercial thing, isn't it? You're bringing people in, showing off what you've got and what you do, and making a sustainable business out of it at the same time. And
where are you going? What's next? I mean, you've got lots of different elements of the business, but is there a grand plan, or do you say this is what we're going to do this year and we'll see how it goes?
The grand plan has always been to pass on the estate to one of the children in a fit and healthy state so that they can bring their family up here and make a living out of it. So no, there's no grand plan as such, nothing drastic anyway. All these little developments that we make, they're all with that goal in mind, to make the business sustainable and resilient so that it works going forward.
We'd like to think that A-Plan Rural will have a hand to play in that as well.
Yeah, of course. But, I mean, James, you're up there a little bit longer. What else do you want to see? What are you excited about? Sort of getting to know about the estate.
Well, I suppose I've just got to I've got a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old, so really it's all focused on the Christmas market now. Yeah. Getting stuck into some Stollen
and testing out the swings.
Testing the swings.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. We always finish the show with 2 questions, which is a message for the public and a message for farmers.
I would say to the public, be curious, come out and find out what, if you don't know what happens out in the country, come and find out. Come down to places like Logie Steading, engage with the estates, engage with farmers, and find out why we do what we do, because I think that's an important thing.
James?
I'd have to sort of reiterate that. I mean, we've got a lot of clients who've got a similar business model, and they rely on getting the public to come out. Obviously, the estates need responsible access because there's a farming enterprise, there's a sawmill enterprise as well. As insurers, we've obviously got a vested interest in everything being done sort of safely and things. But these are wonderful places, and I think it's a real privilege to get out and sort of understand what makes the estate tick. And there's a great offering at the Steading. It's out in rural Moray, but it's very accessible if you're up on your holidays. If you're in Speyside, come up and visit, I'd say.
Yeah. And finally, so a message to farmers, a general message, Alec.
I would say to farmers, keep doing the amazing job that you're doing. And I'm speaking with a Scottish angle here. Hopefully we can get some more clarity on the direction we're going from our leadership, and that will allow us to really step forward and make what we do even better.
Super. I think we'll leave it there. But it's been really, really fascinating hearing more about the estate. Thank you so much, Alec. That is all we have time for. But huge thanks to Alec Lang from the Logie Estate for coming on. And thanks to James Dawson from A-Plan for joining me, and to A-Plan Rural for supporting this episode. I hope you've enjoyed hearing about today's business. And if you'd like your business featured on the podcast, please do just get in touch. You can contact me by visiting benjamineagle.co.uk. For now, though, from all of us here, we wish you a very happy festive time, and thank you for listening.